History books are full of the powerful, the famous, the ones who changed the world. We read about emperors and empresses, kings and queens, their grand weddings, their epic battles, their lasting legacies. But what about the others? What about the ones who were born into unimaginable privilege, into the heart of the mighty Habsburg dynasty, only for their stories to be whispered away by time or tragically cut short before they even had a chance to begin? The Habsburgs ruled vast stretches of Europe for centuries, their family tree sprawling and complex. Each child born into this dynasty held a place, a potential, a destiny, yet for some that destiny remained forever unfulfilled. Their lives, though lived within the gilded cages of palaces, became mere footnotes, their names barely remembered. Here are 5 Habsburg royal children whose lives, for various heartbreaking or unexpected reasons, seemed to slip away from the grand narrative, leaving behind only shadows and questions. They were born into power, groomed for greatness, but then they were gone almost as if they vanished. Number 1. Archduke Leopold Johann of Austria. The year was 1616. The Holy Roman Empire, a vast and intricate web of states under the rule of the Habsburgs, was bracing itself. Emperor Ferdinand II, a man known for his fierce devotion to the Catholic faith and his unyielding will, was eagerly awaiting the birth of his first son with his wife, Empress Eleonora Gonzaga. The empire needed heirs, strong ones, to continue the powerful dynasty that had defined European politics for generations. The Habsburg line was everything: a guarantee of stability, a promise of continued rule. Every birth was an event of immense importance, watched by courtiers, diplomats, and ordinary people alike. On a bright, crisp day in January, specifically the 24th of January, in the grand imperial city of Graz, the anticipation reached its peak. Empress Eleonora went into labor. The imperial palace buzzed. Physicians and midwives were on standby, ready to assist in the delivery. The future of the empire, it felt, hung in the balance. When the news finally arrived, it was met with immediate, overwhelming joy. A son had been born. A healthy boy, a direct male heir, a continuation of the powerful Ferdinand's line. He was named Leopold Johann. The news spread quickly through the palace, then out into the streets of Graz, and soon across the empire bells rang. Celebrations were planned. The birth of Archduke Leopold Johann was a moment of immense relief and hope. He was the firstborn son destined to carry on the family name, to potentially inherit the crowns of Bohemia and Hungary, and perhaps even the Holy Roman Empire itself. His existence was proof that the dynasty would endure. He was cradled by his ecstatic parents, showered with the hopes and dreams of a vast empire. His tiny hands and feet, his soft cries were seen as omens of a prosperous future. The future of the Habsburgs seemed secure, vibrant, and full of promise. With this new arrival, however, the joy was tragically short. In the era before modern medicine, infant mortality rates were frighteningly high, even for the most privileged families. Diseases that are easily treatable today could sweep through nurseries, claiming the lives of the youngest and most vulnerable without warning. The imperial nurseries, though perhaps cleaner and more attended to than common homes, were not immune to these unseen threats. The small Archduke, so recently a beacon of hope, began to show signs of distress. The exact nature of his illness has been lost to the detailed yet sometimes incomplete records. Perhaps it was an infection, a fever, or a congenital condition that medical knowledge of the 17th century simply could not identify or treat. The physicians of the court, the most skilled healers available, worked tirelessly. They tried every remedy known to them, every potion, every method of care. But the young Leopold Johann, only days old, was too fragile. The strength that was supposed to guide an empire was not enough to fight off the unseen assailant that had claimed so many other infant lives across Europe. The joy that had erupted just a few days prior began to fade, replaced by a growing dread within the imperial family. The emperor and empress watched helplessly as their newborn son struggled. The prayers offered for his recovery became more fervent, the hope more desperate. Then, on the 4th of February 1616, just 10 days after his birth, Archduke Leopold Johann died. The celebrations that had been planned were abruptly cancelled. The bells that had rung in joy now tolled in sorrow. The hopes that had been placed upon his tiny shoulders crumbled into dust. The grand future envisioned for him vanished into thin air. His brief existence became a stark reminder of the fragility of life, even for those born to immense power. He was buried quickly, his tiny casket a poignant symbol of shattered dreams. For Emperor Ferdinand II and Empress Eleonora Gonzaga, the loss was profound. They had held their firstborn son, dreamed of his future, and then watched him slip away almost as soon as he had arrived. His death was a personal tragedy, but also a dynastic challenge. The empire still needed a male heir, while they would later have other children, including a son named Ferdinand Ernst, who would eventually succeed his father as Emperor Ferdinand III. Leopold Johann's brief life and swift departure from the world meant he left no personal mark on history, no achievements, no stories, no decision. He was merely a name on a genealogical chart, a ghost of a potential emperor. He entered the world with immense promise and left it just as quickly, his story one of profound absence. He became the definition of a vanished royal child, a fleeting presence in a dynasty that spanned centuries, his existence barely a flicker before it was extinguished forever. His name, Leopold Johann, remains a quiet testament to the unpredictable nature of fate, even for those born into the greatest power. Number 2. Archduchess Johanna Gabriele of Austria. The world that Archduchess Johanna Gabriele entered was one of glittering splendor and stern expectations. Born on February 4, 1750, she was the 11th child and the 9th daughter of the formidable Empress Maria Theresa and her husband, Emperor Francis Stephen. Maria Theresa was a ruler of legendary status, a woman who had fought to retain her family's vast territories and reshaped the Habsburg monarchy. She was a mother to 16 children, a fact that speaks volumes about her dedication to her family and to the continuation of her dynasty. Each child, regardless of their birth order, was a pawn in the intricate game of European politics, destined for a strategic marriage, a religious life, or a role within the imperial court. Johanna Gabriele, or Hannero, as she was affectionately known within the family, was born into the heart of this large, bustling royal family, residing in the grand palaces of Schönbrunn and Hofburg in Vienna. Life at court was structured, rigorous, and steeped in tradition. Education was paramount for royal children, designed to prepare them for their future roles. Johanna Gabriele, like her many siblings, was tutored in languages, history, geography, and various accomplishments considered suitable for a princess, such as music, dancing, and drawing. She would have spent her days in the company of her sisters and brothers, navigating the complex dynamics of a huge family, where affection mingled with rivalry and the constant awareness of one's place in the pecking order. Despite the formality, Maria Theresa was a devoted mother. Even if her love was often expressed through strict discipline and high expectations, she took a personal interest in her children's upbringing, reviewing their progress, and ensuring they adhered to the strict routines designed to mold them into proper Habsburg royals. Johanna Gabriele was known to be a sweet-natured child, perhaps a little quieter than some of her more boisterous siblings. She shared a close bond with her younger sister Josepha, who was born just a year after her. They were often together, two young princesses growing up in the shadow of their powerful mother, dreaming of futures that would undoubtedly involve political marriages to secure alliances for their family. As Johanna Gabriele grew, she was observed by diplomats and courtiers, their reports on her character and appearance contributing to the ongoing assessment of her suitability for a strategic match. Royal children were, after all, diplomatic tools. Their marriages could seal treaties, expand territories, and strengthen the Habsburg grip on power across Europe. For a girl like Johanna Gabriele, the expectation was a marriage to a prince from another royal house, a union that would solidify alliances and extend the family's influence. Her life, like so many royal daughters before her, was not entirely her own. It was shaped by the needs of the empire. In the year 1762, the world seemed stable, and Johanna Gabriele was 12 years old, on the cusp of adolescence. At this age, discussions about her future husband would have already begun in earnest within the imperial family and among Europe's various courts. She was entering a phase of life where her education would shift more towards the specific etiquette and duties of a queen or princess consort. She would be learning about the customs of foreign lands, preparing for a life far from her beloved Vienna and her large family. Her younger sister, Josepha, was a constant companion during these years, and their shared future as brides of foreign monarchs would have been a frequent topic of their private conversations and dreams. However, the 18th century, despite its Enlightenment ideals and advancements, was still a time when deadly diseases posed a constant threat, even to the wealthiest and most protected individuals. One of the most terrifying and indiscriminate killers was smallpox. This highly contagious viral disease caused fever, fatigue, and a distinctive rash that often left survivors disfigured. For those who contracted it, the mortality rate was alarmingly high. Entire families, even royal ones, could be devastated by an outbreak. Courts lived in a constant state of fear of the disease, and yet there was no cure, no vaccine, no truly effective treatment. In the autumn of 1762, smallpox arrived at the imperial court in Vienna. It swept through the city, sparing no one, not even the children of the empress, one by one. Members of the imperial household fell ill. The fear in the Schönbrunn palace would have been palpable. Every cough, every fever, every rash would have been watched with mounting dread. Despite all the precautions taken within the palace, the disease found its way to the imperial children. First Archduchess Johanna Gabriele contracted the dreaded illness. She was cared for by the finest physicians of the time, attended by devoted servants, and watched over by her anxious parents. Empress Maria Theresa, who herself had survived smallpox as a child, would have been particularly terrified. Knowing the agonizing course of the disease, Johanna Gabriele fought valiantly against the illness. Her young body, however, was no match for the relentless assault of the virus. The disease took its cruel course, weakening her with fever and covering her skin with the telltale pustules. Despite all the prayers and medical efforts, her condition worsened. She suffered for days. Her pain undoubtedly eased as much as possible by her attendants, but her fate was sealed. On October 23, 1762, Archduchess Johanna Gabriele, just 12 years old, succumbed to smallpox. Her death was a profound shock and a deep sorrow for the imperial family. Maria Theresa was devastated by the loss of her gentle daughter. The hopes for her future marriage, her role in dynastic alliances, her life as a Habsburg princess were all extinguished. In a single tragic blow, she was buried in the imperial crypt in Vienna, a stark reminder of the ever-present shadow of disease that loomed over even the most powerful families. Her death was not just a personal tragedy for her parents and siblings, it was a lost possibility for the dynasty. A potential marriage that could have strengthened ties with another European power was gone. Her name, once whispered in diplomatic circles as a future bride, faded into the background, while her older and younger siblings would go on to fulfill important roles, some even becoming emperors and queens. Johanna Gabriele's story ended before it could truly begin. She became one of the many royal children whose lives were cut short by illness, a quiet figure in the vast tapestry of Habsburg history. Her potential forever unrealized, her story unfinished, her life vanished from the grand narrative, remembered mostly for her untimely end, a poignant example of the fragility of even the most privileged existence. Number 3. Archduchess Josepha of Austria. Born on March 19, 1751, Archduchess Josepha was the 12th child of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis Stephen. making her a younger sister to Johanna Gabriele, with whom she shared a close bond. The imperial court in Vienna was her home, a place of immense privilege, strict etiquette, and constant scrutiny. Like her siblings, Josepha's early life was meticulously managed. Designed to prepare her for the dynastic purpose she was expected to fulfill. She was educated in languages, history, and the arts, alongside lessons in piety and courtly graces. Her days were a structured rhythm of lessons, religious observance, and carefully supervised play within the grand halls and gardens of Schönbrunn Palace. Josepha was described by those who knew her as a bright and kind-hearted girl. She was naturally curious and enjoyed the company of her many siblings, though it was her connection with Johanna Gabriele that stood out. They were close in age and shared many experiences, from their studies to their dreams of the future. The death of Johanna Gabriele from smallpox in 1762, when Josepha was just 11 years old, was a deeply traumatic event. For her, witnessing her sister's agonizing struggle and ultimate demise must have been a terrifying introduction to the harsh realities of life and death, even within the insulated world of royalty. It also brought the ever-present threat of smallpox into sharp focus for the entire family. As Josepha grew into her teenage years, the discussions about her future became more urgent. Maria Theresa was tirelessly arranging advantageous marriages for her numerous children to strengthen the Habsburg monarchy's position in Europe. These alliances were not about love. They were about power, land, and influence. Josepha, as a healthy and intelligent young archduchess, was a valuable asset in these diplomatic calculations. Her destiny, like that of many royal princesses, was not her own to choose. It was laid out for her by the needs of the empire. In the mid-1760s, a suitable match was identified for Josepha. She was betrothed to King Ferdinand IV of Naples and Sicily. This was a highly significant union. Naples and Sicily were strategic kingdoms in southern Italy, and a marriage alliance would strengthen Habsburg influence in the region, countering the power of other European states, particularly France and Spain. The young King Ferdinand, though just 16 at the time of the betrothal, was a crucial figure. Josepha, at 15, was being prepared to become a queen, a consort who would bear heirs and help manage the affairs of a distant kingdom. The news of the betrothal would have been met with a mix of excitement and trepidation for Josepha. It meant leaving her family, her home in Vienna, and journeying to a foreign land whose customs and language she would need to master. She would take on immense responsibilities, the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders. Her education would have intensified, focusing on the history, culture, and political landscape of Naples. Dresses were commissioned, jewels prepared, and diplomatic arrangements finalized for the grand wedding and her journey south. The court buzzed with preparations for this major dynastic event. The wedding was set for October 1767. It was to be a grand affair, a public display of Habsburg power, and the sealing of a crucial alliance. However, as the date approached, a familiar and terrifying shadow fell over the imperial court. Once again, smallpox. The same disease that had claimed Josepha's sister Johanna Gabriele 5 years earlier. The court had adopted some preventative measures since the last outbreak, but a truly effective vaccine was still decades away. Inoculation, a risky precursor to vaccination, was known but not widely or consistently applied. The family was preparing to visit the imperial crypt, the traditional burial place of the Habsburgs. Located beneath the Capuchin Church in Vienna, it was customary for members of the imperial family to visit the crypt, especially before major life events, like a wedding or departure from Vienna, to pay their respects to their ancestor. On this particular occasion, the body of Josepha's recently deceased sister-in-law, Maria Josepha of Bavaria, the second wife of Emperor Joseph II, lay unsealed in the crypt. Maria Josepha of Bavaria had also died of smallpox. Despite the inherent danger, and perhaps due to a mix of tradition, a sense of duty, or a fatalistic belief, Josepha was compelled to participate in the visit. She went down into the damp, cold crypt, a place where the air might have still held traces of the deadly virus. It was a decision that would prove to be tragically fateful. Shortly after this visit, Josepha began to feel unwell. The symptoms were frighteningly familiar. The fever, the chills, and then the telltale rash began to appear. It was smallpox. The panic in the palace must have been overwhelming. Not only was a beloved daughter gravely ill, but she was just days away from a crucial dynastic wedding. Physicians were summoned, all known remedies applied, and prayers offered fervently. Empress Maria Theresa, herself deeply affected by the loss of Johanna Gabriele, watched with agonizing dread as her daughter fought for her life. The potential bride groomed for a throne was now battling an invisible enemy that respected no royal titles. Josepha's condition rapidly worsened. Despite all efforts, the disease proved too powerful for her young body. On October 15th, 1767, just a few days before she was supposed to depart for Naples and her wedding, Archduchess Josepha died from smallpox. The dreams of a new queen in Naples, of a strong alliance between the Habsburgs and the Bourbons of Spain, crumbled. Her death was a devastating blow to the imperial family and a significant setback for Maria Theresa's dynastic plans. In the immediate aftermath, another of Maria Theresa's daughters, Archduchess Maria Carolina, who was only 15 at the time, was quickly pressed into service to take Josepha's place as the bride of King Ferdinand IV. This swift replacement highlights the dynastic pragmatism of the era. One princess's tragic death simply meant another would step up to fulfill the role. Maria Carolina went on to become a powerful and influential queen of Naples and Sicily, a formidable figure in European politics, and her story became part of the grand narrative. Josepha, however, remained forever a tragically unfulfilled promise. Her name is often remembered only as the unfortunate princess who died just before her wedding, the one who was replaced by her younger sister. Her potential as a queen, her personal characteristics, and her contributions to history vanished with her life overshadowed by the more prominent destiny of her sister. She lies buried in the imperial crypt, another victim of a relentless disease. Her brief story, a poignant testament to the fragility of even the most privileged lives and the arbitrary nature of fate that could erase a carefully planned future in an instant. Her story is one of a future that almost was, a life defined by a marriage that never happened, and a name that faded into the background. Number 4. Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria. Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria, born on September 26, 1718, was the second child of Emperor Charles VI and Empress Elizabeth. Christine of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. She held a special place in the imperial family, being the only surviving sibling of the famed Maria Theresa, who would later become one of Europe's most powerful rulers. The Habsburg dynasty at this time faced a critical issue: the lack of a male heir in the direct line of Charles VI. This meant that Maria Anna and her elder sister, Maria Theresa, despite their gender, were central to the future of the sprawling Habsburg territories. Their very existence highlighted the precariousness of the male succession. Maria Anna grew up in the opulent and formal world of the Viennese court, a place steeped in tradition and governed by strict etiquette. Her education, like that of her sister, was extensive, encompassing languages, history, music, and the social graces expected of a royal princess. She was raised alongside Maria Theresa, sharing tutors and lessons and developing a close bond with her sister. While Maria Theresa was known for her strong will and formidable intellect, Maria Anna was often described as more delicate, perhaps gentler, in disposition. The two sisters were different, yet connected by their unique position as the only children of the emperor, and thus the sole hope for the continuation of the Habsburg lineage. As they matured, the question of their marriages became paramount. With no male heir, Emperor Charles VI had issued the Pragmatic Sanction, a decree that allowed his daughters to inherit the Habsburg hereditary lands. This was a revolutionary concept for the time, seeking to ensure the integrity of the monarchy. However, it still required strong alliances through marriage. Maria Theresa, as the eldest and primary heiress, was destined for a highly significant match, ultimately marrying Francis Stephen of Lorraine. Maria Anna's destiny was also shaped by dynastic considerations, though perhaps with less political weight than her sisters. She was a valuable asset, a Habsburg archduchess whose marriage could solidify alliances and extend influence. As she reached marriageable age, various suitors from European royal houses would have been considered. However, Maria Anna developed a deep affection for Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine. This was an unusual circumstance in an age where royal marriages were almost exclusively political arrangements, devoid of personal choice. Prince Charles Alexander was Maria Theresa's brother-in-law, the younger brother of her husband, Francis Stephen. To the surprise and perhaps initial consternation of the imperial court, Maria Anna's feelings for Charles Alexander were reciprocated. Their love was genuine, a rare commodity in the world of royal unions. While such a personal connection was often disregarded in dynastic matches, Emperor Charles VI, perhaps softened by his advanced age and his deep affection for his last surviving child, eventually gave his consent to their marriage. This was a deviation from the usual cold calculations of power and territory. The marriage took place on January 7, 1744, in the midst of the War of the Austrian Succession, a conflict that had erupted after her father's death to challenge Maria Theresa's right to inherit the Habsburg territories. The union with Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine was, in its own way, politically significant. It cemented the close ties between the Habsburgs and the House of Lorraine, further solidifying Maria Theresa's position. But for Maria Anna, it was a personal triumph, a rare chance at happiness, and a marriage based on affection. Her life, though overshadowed by her powerful sister's imperial struggles, seemed to find a moment of private joy. Soon after their wedding, Maria Anna and Charles Alexander were appointed joint governors of the Austrian Netherlands, a strategically vital region that stretched across what is now Belgium and Luxembourg. This was a significant role requiring diplomatic skill and administrative acumen. They traveled to their new domain, taking up residence in Brussels. Their arrival was met with hope and expectation from the local populace, eager for stable governance during a period of intense warfare. Maria Anna, now a governing archduchess, began to immerse herself in her duties, working alongside her beloved husband. Life in Brussels brought new challenges and responsibilities, but also the anticipation of starting a family. Maria Anna soon became pregnant, a cause for great joy for the young couple and for the entire Habsburg dynasty. The birth of a child would further secure the family's future and bring an heir to the governorship. The prospect of motherhood, combined with her loving marriage and new responsibilities, suggested a promising future for Maria Anna, a life distinct from her sister's imperial burdens, but equally significant in its own right. However, the year 1744, which had begun with such happiness, would end in profound tragedy. For Maria Anna, the difficulties and dangers of childbirth in the 18th century were immense. Medical knowledge was limited and infections were rampant. Even royal women, surrounded by physicians and midwives, faced considerable risks. As her due date approached, the court in Brussels would have been filled with the usual mixture of anticipation and anxiety that accompanied a royal birth. On December 16, 1744, Maria Anna gave birth to a stillborn child. The news was devastating. The loss of the baby was a crushing blow, but the tragedy did not end there. Maria Anna herself suffered severe complications following the delivery. Her delicate constitution, perhaps weakened by the rigors of childbirth, succumbed to what was likely a puerperal infection or hemorrhage. Despite all efforts by her doctors, her health rapidly deteriorated. Just 5 days after the stillbirth, on December 17, 1744, Archduchess Maria Anna died at the age of 26. Her death was a shock to the imperial family and a source of profound grief for her husband Charles Alexander, who was left heartbroken. Empress Maria Theresa, despite her ongoing struggles in the War of the Austrian Succession, was deeply affected by the loss of her only beloved sister. The close bond they shared made Maria Anna's death a personal and irreplaceable void in the Empress's life. Maria Anna's story, while known, is often overshadowed by the monumental reign of her sister. Her brief marriage, her unique love match, and her short tenure as governor of the Austrian Netherlands are footnotes in the grand narrative of Maria Theresa's struggle for power. She lived a life defined by personal affection in a world of political unions, only to have it tragically cut short by the very act of trying to fulfill her dynastic duty. Bearing an heir, she was interred in the imperial crypt in Vienna alongside her parents and other family members. Her dreams of motherhood and a life with her husband brought to an abrupt end. Her story vanished not through obscurity of birth, but through the swift, merciless hand of fate. A life of warmth and potential extinguished before it could truly blossom, leaving behind a poignant silence, where a vibrant sipe wound. Number 5. Archduke Karl Joseph of Austria. Born on August 7, 1590. Archduke Karl Joseph was a son of Archduke Charles II of Austria and Maria Anna of Bavaria. He was a younger brother to Emperor Ferdinand II, making him a member of the Styrian branch of the Habsburg family. This was a distinct and important line within the larger Habsburg dynasty, known for its strong Catholic convictions during the tumultuous period of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation. Karl Joseph was born into a family that was deeply committed to upholding and spreading the Catholic faith. Unlike many of his siblings who were destined for political marriages or military careers to advance the family's power, Karl Joseph's path diverged early. From a young age, it became clear that his inclinations were towards the spiritual life, rather than the secular pursuit of power, or a dynastic marriage. This was not entirely uncommon for younger sons in large royal families. When direct succession was secured by older brothers, younger sons often entered the church, gaining significant ecclesiastical positions that still carried immense influence and prestige. Karl Joseph's journey into the church began at an early age. He was groomed for a religious career, receiving an education that emphasized theology, canon law, and the strict adherence to Catholic doctrine. His piety and intellectual aptitude for religious studies were evident. In 1605, at the remarkably young age of just 15, he was appointed Bishop of Brixen. This was a powerful ecclesiastical position, granting him spiritual authority over a significant diocese. This appointment was followed by others, further cementing his place within the church hierarchy. In 1608, he became Bishop of Breslau, another important bishopric. The accumulation of these powerful religious titles for such a young man highlighted both the Habsburgs' influence within the church and Karl Joseph's genuine commitment to his chosen path. He was not merely a titular head. He took his responsibilities seriously, actively engaging in the spiritual and administrative duties of his offices. His ecclesiastical career reached its zenith when he was appointed Grand Master of the Teutonic Order in 1618. The Teutonic Order was a powerful religious and military order that had a long and storied history in Europe, holding significant lands and influence. Becoming its Grand Master was a prestigious achievement, placing Karl Joseph at the head of a major organization that blended spiritual leadership with considerable worldly power. This appointment further solidified his position as a major figure within the Catholic Church and within the Holy Roman Empire. Even though he was not pursuing traditional political governance, throughout his life, Archduke Karl Joseph focused on the duties of his various bishoprics and his role as Grand Master. He was known for his administrative skills, his dedication to the Counter-Reformation ideals that his family championed, and his personal piety. He was actively involved in church reforms, promoting Catholic education and working to strengthen the Church's influence in his territories. His life was one of quiet devotion and effective administration, a stark contrast to the often tumultuous political lives of his royal relatives. He did not lead armies, negotiate treaties, or rule kingdoms. In the traditional sense, his battles were spiritual, his diplomacy ecclesiastical. His influence, while real, was contained within the specific spheres of the Church and the Teutonic Order. He played a crucial role in supporting his brother Emperor Ferdinand II in his staunch Catholic policies during the early years of the 30 Years' War. Karl Joseph's support was intellectual and spiritual, lending the weight of the Church to the imperial cause. He was a steadfast ally, a pillar of religious authority in a time of intense religious conflict across Europe. However, despite his significant roles, Archduke Karl Joseph's life story often recedes into the background when compared to the grander narratives of his brother, Emperor Ferdinand II, who was at the heart of the 30 Years' War, or other Habsburgs who held direct imperial power. Karl Joseph's choice of a religious life, while personally fulfilling and historically important, meant that he largely stepped away from the direct line of political succession and the spotlight of dynastic marriages. He did not father heirs, nor did he rule a state as a sovereign prince. His legacy was administrative and spiritual rather than dynastic or military. Archduke Karl Joseph died on December 23, 1624, at the relatively young age of 34. The exact circumstances of his death are not widely detailed, but like many in that era, his life was cut short by illness. He was buried in the imperial crypt in Vienna, a final resting place shared with his secular relatives. His story is one of a different kind of vanishing. He did not die as an infant, nor did he succumb to a tragic illness just before fulfilling a preordained destiny. Instead, he chose a path that, while powerful in its own right, led him away from the direct dynastic narrative of the Habsburgs. He became a significant figure within the Church, a prince, bishop, a grand master, but his life was largely lived within the confines of ecclesiastical administration. He became a less remembered figure in the grand tapestry of European monarchs and their direct heirs. He vanished from the common historical spotlight, his contributions woven into the less visible threads of church history. Rather than the glittering drama of imperial power, struggles a royal child who found his purpose beyond the crown and in doing so stepped out of the direct flow of remembered dynastic history.